Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Just get to it.
Just get Councillor Harvey in camera.
There he is.
Okay, are we ready to go?
We are.
Okay. Welcome everybody. Sorry about the delay, and those who are listening to us, we want to welcome you and sorry about the delay for this meeting. Let's go on to the items of the agenda. Apologies and leave of absence.
Just get a motion to put you in the chair.
I'll just...
Thank you. Someone to move. Thank you.
Yes, I'll move that you chair the meeting, Councillor Dutta.
Yeah, thank you.
All those in favour, raise your hands. Those against, items carried.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Sorry. Okay, item apologies and leave of absence. So we have Dr. Sherlock, Dr. Sexton,
Councillor Fox.
and Councillor Fox for apologies. Thank you. Item number 1, co-option and committee members. So we co-opt.
No need to
No?
co-opt. There's
Okay.
The deputy's next officio.
All right. Okay.
Get a quorum.
Thank you. Thank you. And point number 2, confirmation of minutes. Someone would like to move. Thanks, Councillor Harvey. All in favour? Carried. Number 3, consideration of supplementary items. There being none, we go on to number 4, indications of pecuniary and conflict of interest. Is there any? No. Number 5, transfer of items on the agenda. I take it there is none. Number 6, report 6.1, New Year's Eve fireworks display presentation. Now, is there anyone presenting that? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. So we have Alan Spiegel from ShowFX Australia, who will be presenting to us a short presentation on outdoor fireworks. This was stimulated particularly through some interest earlier in the year regarding some rubbish that was shared or left on and reported to have been left on Belrive Beach. What we wanted to do was share with the committee the approach, the ethics, the material from our provider so that you were confident in regards to the impact that we were having. So we've invited Alan to speak today. He has a short presentation and then we'll provide an opportunity for questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, Chair. My name is Alan Spiegel. Sit down so I can go. This was the items that we want to have a look at and address, which was fireworks in the community, fireworks versus other forms of entertainment such as lasers and drone shows, the economic benefits to our community from fireworks, the overview of how they actually work and what fireworks are made of, including the fireworks debris and management of fireworks debris and how we manage those things. ShowFX has been around since 1995, so I've been doing fireworks for quite a long time, both in here all around Australia and around the world, including winning a couple of awards for our services. I'll keep flicking through so that you can review this later. There's a bit of myself and my history of 30 years in the entertainment business. The presentation today to Hobart City Council and the Community Culture and Events Committee is an opportunity to better understand fireworks on what's being used in displays in Australia and events around Australia. The detailed information is based on the current regulations and legislation, standards used and best practices that we currently use in our fireworks community. Hopefully this will give you a good understanding overall of how they actually work, and then we can talk about the debris and other things that fall, and I'm happy to take questions after it at the end. There's a lot of legislation to facilitate a fireworks display. Contractors need to be able to satisfy many legislative requirements. These requirements include state and federal rules and regulations under the Explosives Acts, standards which are not limited to building codes, emergency procedures, explosive storage, transport and handling. There's a large risk management process which we undertake that involves designing the show and then managing all the risks of that show. displays. And that includes risk assessments, JSAs, which we supply to council and all the appropriate authorities. All professional contractors are required to have insurance, and to be able to get insurance in this day and age, you actually have to have these processes in place, completed for every display. Fireworks in the community. Fireworks is one of the oldest public entertainments, as many of you will be aware. You would have seen fireworks over many years, but dating back to the 13th century, but more the coloured fireworks is since 1830 have been used. Fireworks are still the greatest draw card to attract for public celebrations, and fireworks are still the preferred method of celebrations at most events by a vast majority, offering feelings of hope, happiness and excitement in times of need, and through the sheer enjoyment of great part of celebrating life. The quality of fireworks has vastly changed over the years, with improvements in the high standards and consistency, with environmental factors playing a priority on the way which they're made and they're used. And with fireworks, there's two types of fireworks. There's the fireworks that we do, like we do for council, which are the legal professional ones, and then there's the illegal fireworks. Fireworks versus drones and other methods of entertainment, such as drones, laser shows and drone shows, are available, but they're a completely different form of entertainment. Whilst they can be considered as an alternative, they are very different. Both lasers and drone shows have a significantly higher price, and I'll go into that shortly. Lasers can work well with fireworks as a combination, but not necessarily as a standalone. They don't share the same visual impact and have that visual indulgence. Some of the photos that I've demonstrated here show you how faint the lasers can be, and also how the one on the left, bottom left corner is actually one where it's in very close proximity. But that's because they had a lot of smoke in the air, or high humidity or polluted air to be able to see the laser beams. Without that, you wouldn't be able to see the lasers. Just on the lasers, they require generators to generate a large amount of power to run the lasers, and sometimes that could often be like diesel run generators, and quite a large number. So they still have an impact on the environment. This is drones. Drones are very challenging. They are a new product to the market. They have to have absolute still winds to be able to take off from the ground. They all have to take off together. There are successful drone shows around the world, however the cost is about $1.5 million plus to do a drone show. Drones don't replace the sheer inspiring impact of an audience that fireworks do. These two pictures are local pictures that were in Melbourne recently for a drone show they had in Melbourne in January. Well, if you look up on these photos, on the right hand side you have the Olympics, on the left hand side you have Sydney and both Melbourne underneath. All drone shows recently done. The Melbourne displays cost nearly in excess of $2 million to put on. The Olympics one was nearly $5 million and had over 1,000 drones. It's quite a significant event. The economic fireworks, benefits of fireworks. Fireworks are still the best value for money entertainment as a draw card, as I mentioned before, for any event. And fireworks offer a huge economic impact to small business. The cafes, the restaurants, the side stalls, the hospitality, tourism, and many more businesses that are directly able to benefit from the use of fireworks at these events. Fireworks do create jobs. And for example, I'm using a Sydney spec here of New Year's Eve in 2019. The actual event cost $10 million, including $1 million worth of fireworks, and the economic impact was $130 million, based on about 1 million people watching the fireworks around the harbour. If you apply that same average to as $130 spent here in Hobart, with an estimation of 50,000 people watching on, the economic impact to local business would be $6.5 million. At a cost of about $100,000 of fireworks. The above estimation was based on about 3,000 to 5,000 people at the Taste Festival, and 25,000 people around Sullivan's Cove, Salamanca, and 20,000 watching from hotels, apartments, and everywhere else around from Sandy Point and further on. An overview of how fireworks work. There are many types of fireworks which can be broken down into categories, but the main categories here we're going to talk about is aerial shells and ground fireworks. There is also indoor pyrotechnics, which we're not currently using at the moment on this display. The distinction between the consumer fireworks, which I mentioned before, and professional fireworks often is confusing. However, these days it's pretty much illegal fireworks and professional fireworks. They're all based on sizes and quantities, the quantity of powder that's actually in these displays, in the products itself, and how they're launched. You can have where it gets confusing is you can have a multi-shot box, which is both found in illegal fireworks and professional fireworks. So it does get confusing when you find different types of fireworks around in the community. However, the contents can be very different. Just to explain the two, the picture on the left where you see the very bright streaky looking fireworks is what we would class as ground fireworks, and the aerial shells are on the right hand side. Both photos that were taken here, and that gives you the two delineations of the two different types of fireworks. I'll keep moving on. There's a whole lot of pictures here of the different fireworks that we use. I won't go into a lot of detail, from mines, comets. Again, these are all ground fireworks, which we don't generally use on this particular display much of. Candles we do use. These are all the pink items underneath are all just multiple stars shooting out at any one time. Strobes and flares we don't use much of. Fountains. Multi-shots we do use. These are a box item that shoots X amount of shots. It can be 1 shot, it can be 10 shot, it can be 300 shots. They might be the same, they might be different. We do use these in the display, and that's what they look for, and they burst at certain different intervals. This is what they look like in terms of what they're made of. I've shown you a bit of a variety here. You see the cardboard tubes down the bottom right hand side, that is when it's being manufactured, and then it ends up in like a box shape format, whether it's on angles or straight up. The reason I've shown you the old photos is it's got a lot of plastic and cardboard in it, and some of those methods are changing. All the top plastics are gone now unless it's wet weather, and all the red paper and aluminium, that's all been removed these days, so it doesn't get used. We do flares for signs and things like this. Here's a picture of New Year's Eve itself from here, which is using aerial shells. They're very different. The aerial shells shoot up quite high in the sky and have that big bursting products, bursting everlasting colour. Aerial shells come in different sizes. We've got here from 2 inch to 16 inch. We generally use 3 inch to 12 inch here at the moment in Hobart, and that's giving you just an idea of the sizes and how they come packaged. They're either spherical or they're in a cylindrical package, and that's how they're packaged up to shoot. On the right hand side here, you see the tall fiberglass tubes. That's called the mortars. That's what we fire them out of. A quick overview is the photo in the middle down the bottom shows you the black powder. That's our lift charge to launch it into the sky. That'll come from the very bottom of the tube, pushes the shell right into the sky, and then the one on the right hand side, the photo on the right hand side of the little round balls, that's what that is they're the actual stars that you see burning in the sky brightly. When the shell bursts, on that top left hand corner you see the little white time fuse inside. That is burning from the second that it leaves the mortar, and then it bursts into all the pretty colours. And that's how a shell works. This is a typical New Year's Eve set up on a barge. One from here from a few years ago where there's a whole bunch of mortars set up in timber racks and some ground fireworks as well. Some of the larger shells, the ones on the left are what we use here, 10 inch shells and 12 inch. The one on the right is Japan. I thought you might just have some interest. That's when a new Prime Minister comes into place. They put a 36 inch shell in and send that off. There's some of the traditions around the world. This is us putting the fireworks together, putting some candles, and I'll show you a bit about what they're made of next. Here's an aerial shell broken up for you again. The time fuse is in the centre on the right hand side. That time fuse is burning, and then what you see on the left hand side is what we call the burst powder, which breaks the shell open. The stars itself burn themselves out in the sky, and that's what gets you colours. And where that person's hand is, they're just closing up what we call the burst charge inside to break the shell open. Ground fireworks, again, many different ways we set up these, but the one that I will flick through is like our multi-shots are all staked to the ground, or which in this day and age, well, we don't do that out on the water anyway because we don't have anything to stake it. They're usually in timber boxes, is most of the way, as you can see here. A pretty typical setup on a barge with some timber boxes holding them in place. Display management. For us to actually put on a display, we go through a risk planning management is done for the life of the display from start to finish. Initial plans and drawings, site visits, site surveys, permitting requirements, risk management assessments, safe work method statements, identification of any potential hazards, planning for transport and storage, design and preparation, the setup of the display, the execution of the display, and then the debris and the waste management. These are all things that we need to take on to put a display on. Then we have the security of the display, we have communication, we have setup zones, exclusion zones, especially out on the water. The water police manage the exclusion zones on the water. We have fencing and minimum safety distances, where people can watch from, operators, spotters, and the cleanup. And there's a various thing whether we're on ground or whether we're out on the water. Here's a typical map for New Year's Eve where we have an exclusion zone of 300 metres, allowing for anything that's dangerous to fall within that 300 metres. Another typical map of what we're setting up for the show. That's just basically outlines where everything's going and what's going and what module where it plugs into. And then we would wire all the fireworks as we've just explained. There's an electric igniter on the end of that firework that gets plugged into one of these rails, and then it gets connected back to our computer system that launches the fireworks. The wire itself is copper wire, and that's recyclable, and all the mortars are all reusable, and all the equipment, of course, is reusable. Go into the fireworks debris, which I know is a pretty important topic for what we're talking about here. The fireworks debris comes in a few forms. These days, most, if not all, professional fireworks are made from recycled cardboards, rice papers, and specifically made sellotapes and clay. Lots of the products are made from using biodegradable materials in cardboards and papers again. And some of these pictures I'll go through what they relate to what I've just shown you. There is recyclable items, as I said, the copper wire and cardboard boxes all get reused, and things like mortars get reused. On the left-hand side, you see a little round tubular sort of cardboard. That is come from one of those multi-shots or ground fireworks that's been the remnants of something like that. But in the middle picture, that's what we call little paper discs or cardboard discs, and that's what you find on most of those multi-shot ground items. And that's quite common these days, more so than what you see on the left. On the right-hand side would be aerial shells, from where the aerial shell explains to you how it breaks and explodes in the sky. That's some of the cardboard debris that would be left and from the aerial shell. I've put a few pictures here together for you to show some different type of products, some which are currently used, some which are no longer used. If you look to the bottom pictures, just shows you a typical multi-shots, both more of the commercial illegal fireworks, but that's what they look like both ours are just pretty in just one single coloured paper like the yellow ones you saw, but predominantly the same thing. On the left hand up at the top and the right hand, you'll see the round circular plastic items. They are from things called plastic shells or plastic ground mines. We don't use them, and I don't know many companies that do, professional companies, that anyone that uses plastic shells anymore, but that was just to give you an indication of what they would look like in a debris format, and that would float into the rivers or in waterways. We no longer use those. The clips up on the right hand side, top right of the first photo, are the plastic clips that are the ignite, which is what connects the firework to the actual fuse. Then again, there's different methods to ensure that they don't end up in the water. We use a particular method. Different companies use different ways of doing this, and that's the last piece before the firework launches. Everything else would be coming into the debris, and as you can see, some fuse there on the right hand side as well. The next lot of photos, which includes a photo from earlier in the year. So the top right is the debris from the shells again. The bottom right hand is a piece of shell as well, which is pretty typical. The top left hand is a good example of how they've changed plastic into cardboard and paper mache. That is a piece that goes in between the firework and is quite common to find. And is, once again, if you can see the makeup of how the paper is put together, it really looks like paper mache, to be honest. The middle shot is just a typical 200 or 300 shot cake. And as you can see, all the tubes remain in the cake, and that's how they're made today, so that they don't break away everywhere. You do find the odd tubes, like you say, but the majority of them will stay put, and it will stay on the top of a barge or in your ground site or within your exclusion zone and can be cleaned up. Referring to the other matters that in the pictures in the middle from below, the match on the right hand side, yes, is the match from the shell. That's the last bit that before it launches, and that is made of biodegradable pieces again. It's got a piece of paper in it, and it's also got the fuse inside. Well, the fuse has been used at this stage. It's been burnt out, and it's just got the paper remnants left. The management of debris. Waste is a living activity in which constant improvements have been made, especially in the past decade. The fireworks waste, from all products. There's been chemical changes, there's been formula changes in the fireworks, the way they're made, and there's also been change from plastic shells to cardboard, more suitable cardboard shells. The way we shoot the fireworks is also, there's improvements made in terms of reducing waste. As I said before, removing plastics where not necessary, removing foils, removing any unwanted paper or anything that's can end up as waste that's not required. Reducing the fuse lengths. This is a current measure we're currently testing and looking at. We talked about the fuse that you saw in the debris there. If we reduce that match, there's less chance of it ending up in the water. However, the plastic clip from the top is attached. That would have to go inside the mortar tube. So we're still trying to work out a compromise. It's either the plastic clip ends up in the water or the match can end up in the water. I'm not saying it will, but can end up in the water, as 95% of the debris stays on the barge other than the cardboard that you saw before. The environment, we have an environmental policy that's a living document. We keep striving towards less carbon emissions and better methods to improve the environment, environmental issues that are caused by fireworks. Our best practice methods which we employ to conserve energy. There's many items here which you would have seen in a standard environmental policy. To minimise waste through reduction, etc. I won't go into each item. However, and we're constantly trying to improve what we can do here. The carbon emissions, based on New Year's Eve in Hobart, which last year contained 700 kilos, and this is very approximate. NEQ is our net explosive content. That's what we work out to calculate our carbon emissions. The CO2 would have been 340 kilos. To put into context, most cars with an average engine will be 190 grams per 1.6 kilometres of carbon emissions. Driving in that way. Based on that, it would be 55 cars turning up to the show if they had a 20 kilometre round trip to come and see a display. That would be the same amount of carbon into the air that we're providing. Based on that, to give you something to compare on that size show. And also, that's actually comparing both 9:30 and the midnight display, I should say. I forgot to take that into account. We're currently reviewing our carbon emissions payback, which we have had for a little bit of time. Due to COVID, we're revamping that at the moment, and which once again will be working towards being carbon neutral. That's pretty much the overall presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Greatly appreciated. Some very good information. Now, any questions?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And thanks for the presentation. That was much appreciated. I didn't know much about how the fireworks worked, but I have appreciated the beauty of them over time. But yeah, the pollution, the marine debris thing raised last year caught our attention. So it's clear that that's not your pollution. It's come from other fireworks. But can you just explain to me what you understand to be the avenues that people get illegal fireworks? And I also know that there's permits available to have community fireworks events. So how do both the permits and how do the illegal fireworks come about?
Sure, no problems, Bill. There's two separate questions there. The illegal fireworks are just a totally illegal activity where someone's bought them. They are entering the country and the state through various means. They're not actually connected to the fireworks industry as such. They'll be come in a container that someone's bringing furniture from China, or they're bringing something else from China, and they'll end up getting fireworks because the people that go over to buy their other items that they're buying are sold these items, and then they get into the country. Not every single container, as you could appreciate, is checked on the wharf by customs, so they do get missed a lot. There is a large amount of illegal fireworks in amongst the community, and then they get sold through various means of criminal activity, mostly. The permits that you talk about for community displays still require, there's two different things. There might be two things, items in your question. One would be like the old Territory Day, where you could have 3 days where you could go and buy fireworks from a certain time and use them within a certain time. I don't believe that's still happening in Tasmania. My understanding now is that only happens in Darwin for Territory Day. So it's like Guy Fawkes and things like that, which Canberra had, and Canberra's now given away that. You can't do it in Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, Adelaide or Perth anymore. Those days have gone. But getting back to that community one, you still need a pyrotechnics licence to be able to go and apply for a permit for any community event. So if I was asked to do the local school or the local anything, Christmas carols or anything like that, we would still apply a permit process as we do for New Year's Eve.
Okay, so those permits are not just Barry going down to the shop, buying a bunch of fireworks, filling in a form, and then going off and sending them into space down the paddock.
Correct,
Yep.
100%. They wouldn't be able to be issued a permit. As part of the permit, which is nearly 4 pages long, it asks how you're going to transport them, how you're storing them, where are you storing them, who are you purchasing them from. WorkSafe are the combatant authority for that, and
Yep.
we apply to WorkSafe, and then part of that we have to have landowners' consent. We also have to have the fire brigade and police aware of the event, and civil aviation. So there's quite a bit that's involved in obtaining a permit. It's not a 5-minute thing, just go and get, like as you say.
Okay, so clearly there was no permit obtained that caused the pollution from last year, so it's absolutely that it was a illegal fireworks then.
We're suggesting that because I've never seen those caps before, the plastic caps that were raised. The match I can agree with and say that yes, that could have come from ours quite happily, but the plastic caps that you see, they're not from our fireworks because we don't use plastic in our shells or our ground for that matter. But you could say there's quite a lot, Bill, of illegal activity of fireworks on New Year's Eve. We see it, we do see it in other states. There's quite a lot of it in general times, not just New Year's Eve. So that's quite possibly the case that someone was letting off something. And those plastic caps could have come from one of those box items that I just showed you, or the candles, and that could have been one item. So they might have had one illegal item and let that off there, and that's how you've got so many caps. That is quite the possibility.
Yep, okay, then that's a good explanation. I really appreciate that, thank you.
Deputy Lord Mayor, do you have a question?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks, Alan, for that comprehensive explanation of what happens. I'm just curious to know if there are any local producers of fireworks, or are they all from overseas?
There's two family companies here in Australia still. One definitely doesn't make fireworks. The other one has the ability to manufacture, but no longer manufactures in Australia, as they've gone and invested overseas in China. All the professional products that we use are coming from professional factories, but they are all from overseas in the display fireworks. Other fireworks, like the indoor sort of items and that, we do buy from various countries, but not in Australia. There's no local manufacturers that are making fireworks full-time anymore.
And so, and just as a corollary, so where are they purchased from?
The majority of the fireworks are coming out of China for the outdoor display items that you see. China's has one province that's all they do is make fireworks, and they make nearly 85% of the world's supply of fireworks outside of Italy and Spain, are the other two big manufacturers.
Mm-hmm. All right, thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Greatly appreciated. Now, just one question that I have. Is there other competitors here locally that you compete with, or you have a monopoly?
I wish I did have a monopoly. No, I don't have a monopoly on it. There is 5 major players in Australia. all which are from the mainland. I don't have really, there's not really a competitor that's at our level full time in Tasmania that I know of. There's a couple of pyrotechnicians that have got a licence to work and use the fireworks, but they don't have the electronic systems like we have that run your New Year's Eve. Your New Year's Eve's completely automated by computer, and that sort of system is not available in Tasmania. I have not known anyone to have that. So there's no big fireworks operators, I'd say, here. They're all from the mainland.
Thank you very much. Now, someone would like to move the recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Moved. All in favour? Anyone against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you very much. Greatly appreciated.
No problems. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, much appreciated.
Thank you.
Very informative. Okay, we move on to 7.1 Committee Action Status Report. Someone like to move note? Thank you, Deputy. Any comments? Any questions? I put it to vote. Everybody in favour? Anyone against? All. Thank you very much. Carried unanimously. Questions without notice, number 8. Any questions? No questions? Number 9. Someone would like to move?
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey.